Hello, and welcome to the Crafty Motato. I am Mo, the Crafty Potato, and today I am going to be making my twist on a medieval dagged hood with a liripipe. Hoods like the one I'm imagining started to become popular around the late 1200s and continued to be worn in some fashion until the mid to late 1400s. Dagging is the fun little decoration along the edges that could come in all kinds of shapes, and a liripipe is a long, tail-like extension at the end of the hood. These could reach absolutely ridiculous lengths, so I'm going to make mine fairly short as far as liripipes go. The pattern for this is fairly straightforward. You'll need the hood to be long enough that it fully goes around your chin and deep enough that it fully goes around the back of your head. You'll want the capelet to jut out at an angle and the skirt of the cape to cover your shoulders. We're also going to need a godet, a triangular piece that will be sewn in here to give the cape more fullness. The main important thing here is that our angles for the front and back of the hood are both going to be just about 90 degrees. And of course the liripipe, which can be any length you want or have fabric for. I'm also going to fold over my front edge just for flair. For this project we'll need a straight edge. I'm using a T-square, but a ruler would work just fine. Fabric scissors, or a rotary cutter if you have one. Fabric! I'm using a lovely black embroidered linen, but cotton or wool or even velvet was also quite popular way back when. Really, you can use whatever you want, though I'd advise against anything super stretchy. You'll also need fabric for your lining, but mine hasn't come in yet. Tailor's chalk will also come in handy if, like me, you're just going to draft the pattern on your fabric. You'll also need a measuring tape and the head of whoever you're making the hood for. Take your measuring tape and measure the length of your head, starting at the chin and going all the way around. Lay out your fabric so that the fold is on the top. Then divide that length measurement in half and draw it onto your fabric. I'm going to add an additional 2 inches to this measurement because I don't want my hood to be super close around my neck. Then measure the widest part of your head, which is usually just above the tops of the ears. Divide that by half and mark that measurement along the fold. This is how deep your hood will be. I like my hoods to be extra deep, so I'm going to add an extra 2 inches to this number as well. I'm taking the same length measurement and making a parallel line to the first one, starting at the mark I made for my width. You're also going to take a measurement along the side of the neck, starting just at the base of the chin, and measure down along the shoulder to however long you want the capelet to fall. Take that whole number and draw a line about 45 degrees out from the base of the back of the hood. It doesn't have to be exact, just eyeball it. Then make another mark the same length about an inch or two in from the base of the front of the hood. Measure the length of your capelet out along the curve. Here's a special bonus appearance of my hip curve, which I use just to fix the curve line a bit, but you can really just eyeball until your curve looks right to you. And then about halfway through that curve, draw a straight line going up to just the base of the hood, and that's where we'll add in the godet. Using your fabric scissors or a rotary cutter, cut out your pieces. When you get to the hood, add in a square of about 2 inches, and this is where we'll attach the liripipe later on. Slice open the straight line you added in the middle of the capelet, and then measure how tall your cut is. Using this measurement, make a 90-degree triangle and measure out the same length to create a curve between the 2 points, all the same length, and cut out 2 of these triangles. These will be the godets. For the liripipe, you can cut a 4-inch wide long strip out of another piece of fabric and make it as long as you want, or just use your offcuts to decide how long it will be for you. This is more in keeping with historical liripipes, as fabric was expensive to make and you'd want to use as much of it as you could. I'm cutting 2 2-inch long strips, and I'll sew them together along the top. Now it's time for everyone's absolute favorite part of any sewing project, ironing. Technically, you should iron your fabric before you cut it out, but because I love ironing so much, I procrastinated until I absolutely had to do it, which is now. So focus ironing ASMR! Hey look, my lining fabric finally came in. I chose this really colorful Polish folk art inspired fabric, which is completely not historical in any way, but I like it and it's my hood so I can do what I want. But now all those steps I just did with my black linen, I get to do all over again with my lining. Hey, that was easy. I had a lot less of this fabric to work with, so I have to piece together the main parts of the hood. But that is totally okay because piecing was also extremely common historically. Again, fabric was expensive. Once pieced together, I can go ahead and add in the godet. Sewing in a godet can be tricky. What I do is sew in a straight line all the way up to the point, then make sure my needle is down right at the tip of that point. Then I move my fabric around so I can stitch the other side of the godet. I also go ahead and stitch the godets into the black linen. I also stitch together my liripipe and cut off the end of one edge square. Now I can sew it onto that square I left at the end of my hood before. With the body of the hood together, I flip it so that the fabric is right side facing in, and I sew along the entire back of the liripipe and back of the hood in one stitch. I do the same to the lining, and now I can turn the black hood right side out, using the pointy end of a tool to turn out the point of the liripipe. I now need to connect the lining and the black linen hoods together at the front of the hood only, using these nifty clips meant for quilting. I pressed open all the seams on the inside, and now I need to sew along the base, so I pin that together just at the seams to make sure they match. Now it's finally time to decide what style of dagging I want to use along the hem. Dagging could come in all sorts of different shapes, from simple squares to really complicated oak leaves. I decide on a somewhat easy diamond shape and draw that out along the edge of the hem. Then I stitch along that line. The astute of you will notice that there are in fact 2 lines of stitching here. This is because I was silly and drafted my dagging pattern without seam allowance. So once I'd stitched it all together, I needed to go back and do it all again, 10 millimeters in from the line. It's okay, that only took forever. Don't be like me. Now I can cut along the actual seam allowance, clipping the corners and the points extra small, so they'll be easier to turn right side out. To do that, I slice open the back seam of my lining and use that hole to pull everything right side out, and then begin to point turn every single dag, which I then have to iron so they lie flat. Now, buttons! I choose a variety of buttons, none of which match, but all of which are roughly the same size and color from my stash. Then I measure out places for each button, 3 centimeters apart and 1 centimeter in from the edge, using a seam gauge to help, but you could also do this with a ruler. Then I hand sew each button into place, using some upholstery thread which I use beeswax on to keep the threads from getting tangled. Then I measure the buttonholes for each button, using the seam gauge again, and stitch the buttonholes using my sewing machine because I am not a maniac who enjoys sewing buttonholes by hand. And finally, with the last button in place, it's time for the reveal. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel for future updates. I now also have a Patreon, where members can hear about upcoming projects and behind-the-scenes information. The link is in the description. Until next month, this is Mo, the Crafty Potato, signing off.